folks. This is episode 2, Thoughts of a Millennial. This is your boy Raheem, joined in by Amir and CP. We got a lot to discuss today. Episode 1 was a major hit, went viral all throughout
One step
YouTube.
at a time.
I mean, people were wondering exactly who we were, and where we came from. But yeah, we took the world by surprise, and we want to keep it going. We want to keep the consistency. Every week, we want to bring you guys episodes. We want to bring in new material for you guys to digest, talk about, and essentially share your opinions about. So without further ado, let's get into it. There is a bunch of stuff that we want to get into today. Let me quickly just do a summary of what we're going to talk about, and then one by one we'll get into the different topics. So 100% we're going to talk about Joe Biden's State of the Union. Just happened. So we're definitely going to get into that. We're going to talk about the outage that happened with Meta, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, even X was involved the following day. But this mainly happened on Super Tuesday and then continued on Wednesday. We want to get into that. We want to get into, all the unrest and everything that's happening in Haiti. I think that is definitely of concern. Above and beyond that, we want to get into the ArriveCAN app and ArriveScam, whatever you want to call it, whatever is going on with that. What else are we going to talk about? Oh, yeah, there's a couple of things. This is a bit of a dark topic. I just want to touch on it just because, it kind of hit me. A 19-year-old student from Sri Lanka is accused of stabbing and killing 6 people. So we're going to quickly touch on that. It's a very sad story. And then if we have a little bit of time, we're going to talk about aliens, UFOs, the latest update. Amir has some facts he wants to share. And then we're going to talk about the boxing match that's coming up, Mike Tyson, Jake Paul, 2024 Oscars tonight. And also how AI generated videos are going to affect us in the future. So that's essentially what we're going to get into. So how about we start with the State of the Union, right? So before I get into the facts, ZP, you want to share a little bit of your thoughts about what you thought of the State of the Union?
No, I don't know. Is this going to be a controversial opinion in my what I might have to say? But I just thought it was a clown show. Like, I didn't understand how Mela Harris at the back was standing up every 3 seconds, start clapping, and then every sentence Mr. Joe had to say. That was my initial impression of the State of the Union
Did you
address.
know that she actually broke the world record of continuous squats?
Yeah, I was watching it with my wife, and the joke was that she's just going to get tired at some point.
Yeah.
And I don't know if she was trying to burn some calories while doing that, but it was, in all honesty, like if you just look at it from without paying attention to what Joe was saying, but it just felt like it was a circus, or maybe I was watching a comedy show where Joe is saying a sentence and indiscriminate clapping by the entire crowd. Like, I don't know if it was a crowd work thing going on there. So that was my initial impression. In terms of the substance, now he said a lot of things. He dragged Trump a lot of times. Personally, I don't like Joe. But one thing I did find impressive was he spoke for over an hour, whatever the duration was, and he didn't make a lot of mistakes that he normally does, and he didn't fall down the stage. So that was positive, in my opinion. What did you guys think about it?
It's interesting you say that. Amir, you want to share your thoughts?
So yeah, man. I mean, I don't know. I feel like that this was Joe 2.0 or something, right? Like coming out with no mistakes, holding the ground well and going through with the whole presentation, hour or something, and not making any mistakes in there, and not showing any signs of like, oh, I don't know what the next word is going to be. What am I supposed to say? Those expressions were not quite there. So That's why I feel like it's like a 2.0 version that they've upgraded his software or something. Now he's doing
He
much
did. He
better.
did make a few mistakes. He did make a few mistakes, but
Yeah.
it wasn't as bad as I thought it would be.
Yeah. I mean, look, there's a few things that we learned, right? There's a few things that were very obvious, and then a couple of things that weren't as much. So, what I learned was Biden can still muster up anger and rant for a total of 68 minutes, approximately. Definitely looked like he had taken a few adrenaline shots, and he was certainly on some sort of medication because otherwise, I mean, past 6, 7 o'clock, Sleepy Joe is bedtime, you know? So for him to be coherent enough to deliver that speech, he was definitely on something.
He was also cracking some jokes in there. I don't know if you caught up on
Yeah,
those.
yeah, he actually started off with a joke.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things that I think Kamala Harris and the entire Democratic Party were just cheering, clapping for at any break, really, without the actual meat and potatoes of the situation of whatever he was talking about, right? um Over 32 million people actually tuned in, according to WAPO. And Biden's 22 State of the Union, he actually had an audience of 38.2, so he actually lost about 6 million or so viewers. Trump on average around 44.3 million views. So MSNBC had a couple of different headlines that came out. One of them was, "This was tour de force by Joe Biden." Another one was, "He had Frazier's left hook." This is MSNBC, by the way.
Well,
And
no
then
surprises there.
no surprises at all. So, the when I said that, it was interesting that you said, he didn't fall off the stage, and he had a few slip ups, but not as many as we thought. That was interesting because I think most of the people that were watching, they had set that as the bar, saying that, you know, if as long as he's able to deliver a speech, remain coherent, and not fall off the stage or fall down or find his walkway or whatever the case may be, it's a success, right? And I think that's the bar that was set up. Like, he was literally set up as an F student, and then he ended up getting a D, which made him look like a B in actuality, right? So
And
I
the
thought
crowd
that
work
was,
probably made him look like an A+ with all the cheering and the clapping every 10 seconds.
with all the cheering, exactly. Trump came down, and the following day he actually had a rally, and what he said was, it was the most divisive, partisan, radical, and extreme speech ever delivered by a president. Joe Biden shouldn't be shouting angrily at America. America should be shouting angrily at Joe Biden. This is what Trump said at his rally. So the agenda that Biden was pushing, at least in my view, was they kept pushing, Ukraine. They kept pushing sending money and funds towards Ukraine. Also talked about the border, and I mean, he was kind of almost pigeonholed into talking about the border, with one of the Trump supporters, who unfortunately lost her daughter to an illegal immigrant who raped and killed her. She was sitting there. She kind of, jumped up in between and made him repeat the name, which, by the way, he got wrong. So he did speak about the border, and then he went on a tangent saying that, we want the support of everybody for the border bill. He made it seem as if the Republicans were actually standing in the way of the border bill. So let me ask you guys a question. Amir, you first. When I say that they were talking about a border bill, right? Whatever funding there is to it, how much, percentage wise, how much do you think should be going towards the border to secure the border?
Well, man, that's a difficult number to put on for a percentage, because for any country, to not just US, securing the border means securing the country itself. So It
But
and
what
depending
what
on
I
the
mean,
borders and depending on the threats on the border, that number can vary significantly between a country that has no threats on the border or minimal threats at the border, I should say, than
no,
compared to a
but
country.
sorry, what I mean is, so the border bill is for 118 billion dollars with a
Okay,
B, billion
right,
dollars, right? So
right.
out of that 118 billion for a border bill, how much of that money do you think should go to the border to fix the border?
If the bill is for the border, man, I think more or less everything or mostly everything should go towards the border. And
Okay, I
it
mean
should be
that makes
clear.
sense.
Yeah,
Like that's
yeah,
that's a logical, deduction of it, right?
yeah.
So ZP, what do you think?
What do you mean by the going to the border? Like, do you mean actual at the border, or like other things happening, like hiring more people and then sending them to the border, or coming up with like what do you mean by the question?
So what I mean by it is the border bill consists of 118 billion dollars as funds, right? Out of those 118 billion, how much do you think should actually go towards securing the border? So whether it's hiring people, whether it's creating the wall, whether it's hiring, enforcement, immigration enforcement, whatever it is, but anything to do with the American border between Mexico, how
Sure,
much
then
of the
I would say 100%, same as Amir, 100% of that should go towards anything to do with securing the border.
okay, so it's very reasonable to think that 100%, maybe even say like 95%, 90%, right? So guess how much is actually going towards the border? Out of the 118 billion, 60 billion is going to Ukraine. 14
Really?
billion, yeah, 14 billion is going in assistance to Israel. 4.83 is going to Indo-Pacific nations. 9.2 billion is going to humanitarian aid for civilians in Gaza, the West Bank, and also Ukraine and other nations. And 20 billion is going towards the actual US border.
Oh, I see what you're getting at. Okay, so
Okay.
Democrats, what they wanted is they wanted more support for Ukraine, and Republicans don't want to do anything to do with that. So their
Exactly.
condition, so Republicans really want to secure the border, but Democrats really want to support Ukraine. And the funny thing is, there's a little bit of a segue here, but when Trump was the president, and everyone, my picture was there says free speech, so everyone's entitled to have their opinions. But one fact from Trump's time is there weren't any wars. That's just a fact.
Yeah.
Now, maybe he planted some seeds of wars. That's a different discussion. But the fact is, in those 5 year period, 4 or 5 year period, we didn't have any wars. So when Biden comes in, all these wars start sprouting. Um, Ukraine and Russia being one of them, and then they want to support Ukraine. So Democrats really want to support that war. No one talks about ceasefire. Now, another discussion for maybe another time, but no one's talking about ceasefire. It's all about, hey, we need to give them money and uh, whatever aid they want to give. So that's what Democrats want. And then they have tied it to a domestic issue, which is, hey, we're only going to go secure the border if Republicans agree to sending this aid. So I guess maybe that's what you're getting at. That this they're saying it's 118 billion bill, but then it has all these different components they want to approve as this one big item, big agenda
Well,
item.
well, that's the interesting part, right? Because they label it as the border bill. If any, average citizen was to, look at it, look at the headlines, they would be like, oh, okay, they're actually doing something for the border. They're securing the border, 118 billion going to the border and, to build the wall and basically secure the border. Now, what they've done is they've included all these different clauses later on in the bill that when you read the headlines and if you go through any of the articles, you're reading the first, second, third, fourth paragraph, you don't see any of these details. You literally have to go like 15 paragraphs in to actually get the details of where the actual money is going. And I think that that's been the Democratic agenda from day one. They always manipulate, hide, and have this basically an alternate agenda every single time they push something towards the general public, right?
But
What do
with
you
that
think,
being
Amir?
said, man, like I want to say, okay, fine. Anything that happens on this big scale, um, it has fine prints, it has clauses, and it has a lot of details. And if you look at a slightly different side of the picture over here, so you're saying that only 20 billion went towards the U.S. border itself between U.S. and Mexico. Um, you got to understand that there's a lot of undocumented people coming in from Mexico into the US. There are a lot of those people that are working over there as well. And they've been living there for many, many, many years.
Yeah,
And because of that, right? Like you see that if you are to come into US with legal papers and immigration and everything, then you are technically on your way to becoming a US citizen at some point in the future. But if you're an undocumented person, a business can hire you for like $5 an hour, and you don't really have much negotiation power over there. And there's a lot of companies, there's a lot of places in the US where there are undocumented people working for a lot less wage than what a person with legal documents in the US should be paid for whatever the job may be.
mhm,
And this contributes towards the businesses profiting off this loophole, I guess you should say, right? And even though they have all these verification audits and stuff, we get to hear that they know what people are documented and what people are not documented, and they the way they play this game, that hey, we're doing our job making sure that there's all documented people working all over the place. They're not really, they're just showing that picture that that's how it's happening, but in reality it's different, and these people continue to work, continue to live in the US, and all these businesses profit off of that.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, so it's not just the profit and the businesses that, that are getting affected, whether positively or negatively, right?
Of
You also
course.
have to take a look at the crime,
Yes. The
the
other
burden on
areas. Yeah.
E exactly, because the burden on society that you're placing, and not just the burden, by the way, in using resources. I'm talking about, I don't know if you've been keeping up with what's going on in Chicago and New York, but you literally have to do one Google search, and you will find that there is illegal migrants taking over the streets of New York. They're urinating, they're defecating in front of houses because they don't have any place to go, they don't have any place to live, right? They're literally like terrorizing all the uh, the general public that lives there, all the residents of New York. Finally,
But it's funny
Mayor,
though, right? Like I laugh about it though.
yeah,
The So when this was happening in the red states and they were saying, "Hey, we need help to secure the
yeah,
border, and we need help, get us some funding because it's a burden on just one state now." But then all of a
yeah,
sudden they start chartering these buses, and then these buses go and drop these migrants off,
yeah,
and it's just hilarious because all of a sudden now you have this happening in New York, but then you have the Democrats wake up and even start thinking about any measures. But
yeah,
before that, if you were to say, hey, this is a problem, then they would start shaming all these red states. And then they go and they ask, okay, why are people supporting Trump? And they just categorize everyone with the same paintbrush, which is it's funny. It's just hilarious to see that how only when, as you said, Chicago and New York, all these um, blue states started to get affected. That's when they woke up and then they came up with this bill. And they know Republicans are going to oppose this. It's obvious they're going to oppose because they don't want um support to go to Ukraine for whatever reasons. Then that's again a different discussion. But
yeah,
they're not going to accept it. Democrats know they're not going to accept it. They have tied the two issues. But I also think Republicans are also playing this. It's in their benefit with the elections coming up. It's in their benefit to not have this issue resolved, because if it does get resolved, that means the Democrats are going to take the credit of
take
resolving
the
this
win.
issue.
I
So
completely
I
agree with
think
you. Yep.
I think both parties, and that's the other thing. There's only two parties in states, so it's either this or that, and both of them are playing this political game. As far as I understand, that's my opinion about this matter.
I think you're right, because I agree with that. I agree with that. I mean, New York, there were certain senators that came out, and you can again pull this up. They were literally encouraging migrants to come in, and they were like, these are safe havens for you guys. You guys should come here, to a point where all of a sudden the rhetoric changed, and then it was like, nope, we cannot accept anybody else. Do not send anybody here, right? You have
That's
senators
funny.
in Chicago and New York saying this exact phrase. We cannot accept anyone else, right?
Yep.
So it's crazy. And another interesting thing, just before we switch the topic, is you would think that from Mexico, the illegal migrants that are coming in are Mexican, right?
Oh, they're Indian and Chinese and Russians.
So that's the interesting thing about it, right? Over the past year, we have
Yep.
actually seen a lot of different nations, illegal migrants from different nations actually coming from the southern border, because I think they realize, and actually in China, I think it was a TikTok video or one of the platforms that they use, that had a detailed step-by-step instruction as to exactly what you need to do in order to cross the border into the US
Can
from
you
Mexico.
send me that link later on? Maybe just for asking for a friend.
Trying to go to the US.
Because
Absolutely.
you know why I say that though? I say that because I've looked into the immigration process of states. So
Yeah.
there's one category in which you can fit in if you're from a different country. It's called the diversity visa, and 50,000 people from different countries all over the world. They accept 50,000 every year. So
Yeah.
Canada is not one of them because there's a big migration happening from Canada to states
Yeah.
legally. So we don't qualify for that visa because there's a criteria. If there's 20,000 or more people coming from a country, then in the last 5 years or so, I can't remember the exact, but you're not allowed. But then there's all these EB categories where if you can't get a job in states, you can't move to states.
Mhm.
The company has to sponsor you, and then that has to be from their Department of Immigration. It has to be kind of proved. There's some sort of approval that you need.
Yeah.
The company has to get the approval, and then they can offer you the job. They have to prove that they
Yeah, there
can
are lawyers
find that
involved in
skill.
this,
Yeah,
both
so
sides.
the immigration process itself is really good, and all the people who are being shamed for saying that why are you against migration or the building the wall is terrible. Like I want to like those people have to think that if let's say you want to invite more people, well, how about you just fix the immigration process and then you make some allowances within that process. Like on the one hand, you have
Exactly.
a very tight immigration process that only wants best of the best people to come to states. But then
Mhm.
on the other hand, you have a border. And the other funny thing is there have been talks of banning TikTok
Yeah. Yeah.
because of the Chinese influence. But then you have Chinese people, immigrants walking without any issue from the southern border. Like, how do you equate those two initiatives? That you want to keep the borders open. You don't really want to do much there, but then you want to ban TikTok. So
Yeah.
it's just uh, two different extremes, in my opinion.
It really is. It's all about, gaining control. And I think that the biggest thing Democrats fear the most right now is that they are losing control because they have basically, for a lack of better terms, a senile president that is essentially just a puppet. There's there's a deep state, hard at work. Uh, Thankfully, he was able to take the adrenaline shots or whatever medication he was on to deliver that speech, because otherwise, I mean, this would have been. And to be honest with you, to my fellow Republicans, to my fellow conservatives, I would say that this is the best thing that could have happened. You know, we want Joe Biden to run because he literally has no chance of winning the election, compared to if Biden drops out and is replaced by either Gavin Newsom or Michelle Obama, right? Because I think both of them could give a hard time to Trump. I don't think Biden is really, I mean, the Democrats, unfortunately, the way their mentality is, they're going to vote blue no matter who. So they're still going to vote for Biden. But I think the in-betweeners, the purple, those people will switch over to the red rather than vote blue. That's my opinion.
Yeah, it'll all come down to the swing states, right? How they vote.
Yeah.
So that'll be interesting. But the margins that Trump is beating or winning the nomination by, that's a very good sign for Republicans.
It is a good sign, but when you talk about swing states, you bring up something very important. And I don't know if you guys have been following this or not, but so in the swing states, what the Democrats want to do, and the reason that they keep pushing this, especially in there's I think a judge in Alabama that just 2 days ago just came out and said that um, asking for ID to vote is racist. Um, how does that make any sort of sense? Right? They keep sticking to the fact that you don't need voter ID in order to register and vote. That makes absolutely zero sense. If you are in the Western world, US, Canada, no matter what you do, you need an ID. You need a driver's license, you need a passport to travel, you need a driver's license to travel within the country, right? You need a driver's license to open up a bank account or any sort of ID, not just a driver's license, but you need an ID to open up a bank account, to apply for a credit card, to have a cell phone, whatever, to get into a club, to drink, whatever it is, you need some sort of ID. So, how is it that the most important thing that you're doing for the country, you don't actually need an ID? And they keep sticking to the same rhetoric because, if you don't have any other excuse, you use the most laziest excuse possible, that it's racist, right? It's discriminatory.
Yeah.
And that's why they keep letting all these illegal migrants in, because it's, literally they're walking in wearing Biden shirts. All the other states that still have, the swing states that still have the same voting rights, where basically you don't need ID, we're still stuck at that same dilemma, right? So until from now until the election, November 5th, until or unless there is any sort of resolution there, it's still going to be a tight race. It's not going to be, a landslide victory for Trump. And so
Yeah,
that's why every vote matters.
that is very
Yes,
interesting.
yes.
One of the things that you do have is when you're a citizen, you earn the right to vote,
Yeah.
Right.
right? That's one of the things that differentiates between you doing your time, as a resident, get your green card, whatever the process is, and in states it could be really long, right?
Yeah.
And then you earn the right to vote. So if that's happening where there's a potential of people not showing their IDs and voting, then that's a big problem.
It's a
Anyone can
massive
vote,
problem.
man. Yeah, anybody
Yeah.
can vote there. Even the person who came from Mexico yesterday, they can go there and vote.
Yeah, yeah,
So
exactly. And that's the biggest issue that they're facing. Now, I want to swing that around into Canadian politics a little bit. And I want to get your guys' opinion on how this essentially affects Canada. First of all, so two-part question. Number one, if either Biden or Trump get elected, how does that affect Canada? Which one would be better for Canada? Number one. And number two, in our political system, where we have liberals, Justin Trudeau, we have NDP, Jagmeet Singh, and we have the Conservative Party with Pierre Poilievre. How do you think the games are being played and manipulated on this side of the border? Amir, go ahead.
so man, the way I see it, I feel like that if Biden is to continue the U.S. presidency, um, for the Canadians, it would mean that the way we are right now, the way we have been for the last few years, ever since Biden's been in power, things have been difficult. I mean, yeah, you can blame all these 10 different things. We had COVID, we had this, we had that, all that. And because of this, the inflation is so high, the interest rate is so high, all that other factors contributing towards it. But way I see it, when Trump was in power, US was doing very well from a business or from a business perspective. All the big corporations, everybody was doing very well on that side, and that was benefiting Canadians as well from this side of the world as well. And there were people were generally more happy, a little bit more money in their pocket, and that's how they were living. And I feel that if regardless who, well, if in Canada, if liberals stay in power, and we have, say, Trump running the US presidency, I think that's a good thing. But with that being said, even if there's somebody else running in Canada, NDP or Conservatives or anyone else, I feel Trump being in power for the US is going to be beneficial for Canada as well, just because our ties are that strong that whatever happens there, we feel the effect of it, whether negative or positive.
Okay, and ZP, what you think?
This is it's a hard question, and the reason I say that is
I agree.
some
I
some
had to think for a minute too.
yeah, someone like Biden, right? I think Canadians, um, especially our politicians, they can kind of take a break, right? They don't have to worry about the defense as
Hmm.
much. They don't have to worry about the unpredictability of the policies that may come in the U.S., how that's going to impact Canada. With someone like Trump, I think our politicians have to be awake. They can't get away with, uh, you know, it, a again, this is a fact, right? Trump is a little unpredictable
Yep.
compared to Biden.
Okay.
Democrats, Biden, let's say Kamala Harris, Michelle Obama, whoever comes in, they're going to be predictable because they follow the same establishment path that's laid out for them, right? They don't deviate from it.
Hmm.
Whereas Trump, and that's the quality that I like about Trump, is he challenges that path. That if he's gonna bomb Afghanistan with the biggest bomb ever, he's gonna brag about it on social media, and you're gonna know about it, that what's
Right.
happening. But it'll catch you off guard. So I think when if Trump's in power, Canada will have to be more on its toes, just to kind of see what's happening. They're gonna have to worry about, because Trump's gonna hold you accountable. You know that. Trump's going
Yep.
to hold you accountable for contributing more to the NATO alliance
Hmm.
that Canadians and rest of the Europeans have gotten away with for so long. So he's going to hold you accountable, which means Canada has to shell up more money out to contribute to that. And they
Yeah.
can't raise taxes because taxes already in Canada are already so high. So then you have to find and build a better budget to be able to do those things. Then he might, who knows? He might say we're going to ban Canadian milk from getting into the U.S. markets, and that was one of the things that did happen the
Yeah.
last time. Um, so then Canada will have to figure out, okay, well, how are we going to work around that? So it's difficult because there's some positives that come out in terms of the accountability of our government when Trump's going to be in power.
Hmm.
Whereas with Biden, just the economics of US, that's again, it's a very difficult question. There's so many factors here, right? The war. So war brings in money,
Yep.
right? You start, you justify the war, and you have $1 trillion industry. All the countries in the world want to up their defense budgets and then start buying equipment, and you have Lockheed Martin and companies like that in states which bring in a lot of cash. So
Yep.
maybe in Trump's time, those industries weren't doing as well, and then maybe in Biden's time, those industries are doing really well. So all those different factors are going to impact Canada. But again, in my opinion, if you want better accountability from our politicians,
Hmm.
I think Trump will be a little bit better, because now Canadians have to start thinking about us and not necessarily the rest of the world. Because again,
Yeah.
unpredictability of Trump will cause Canadians. It can cost us a lot, right? If we sleep on it, if we don't, look out for those policies and don't take those for granted.
Hmm.
Um,
So it's going to bring
from an
change, you're saying, and I feel
I,
maybe
I
change
think
is good.
I think there'll be better accountability from our politicians, because Trump's
Yeah.
going to be America first, right? For a lot of things, Trump's going to go America first, and
Yeah.
then a lot of the things that come to us, let's say for free, because we are good neighbors with states, that will kind of stop, and then Canadians will be forced to think about ourselves, and then other things might get impacted, like sending the aid to Ukraine. We may have to rein in on that a little bit, and then sending the aid to, let's say, Palestine, or whatever else we're doing in terms of social work in the world, and then kind
Hmm.
of negating the need of Canadians. We may have to kind of go back to that. All right, we also have to start thinking about Canadians first, because
We got to think about home. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
so I think Trump may bring that change from that aspect.
Hmm.
So I now you mentioned, like, you guys were talking about Ukraine a bit, and I just want to weigh in a little bit over here, not to go too far off the topic.
Sure.
Now, what we've heard and what is being visible, what is being shown is that the reason why Russia is invading Ukraine is because US is building bases close to the borders over there, and that makes Russia uncomfortable. I mean, if knowing how the relationship is between U.S. and Russia, if U.S. is doing that, if I was the Russian president, prime minister, I would be concerned too, because that technically tells them, hey, they want to be close to us because they want to keep an eye on what we're doing, and maybe they want to, find out whatever weaknesses we have at the border or anywhere in our infrastructure, and then hit us over there. So I think that, when this thing came to light to me, I was thinking, why is US even there? But then again, US kind of wants to be everywhere. So Canada sending that aid, coming back to where what we were talking about, to Ukraine, because Canada is good neighbor with US, and if Trump comes into power, maybe there's a chance, and I feel that there's a chance that the war situation may calm down a bit. But then again, like ZP mentioned, Trump is very unpredictable, and anything can happen overnight. So, but from past history, what I see is that maybe we will see some goods and some bads, like ZP mentioned, and maybe one of the goods that might come out of it is that we won't have to send so much aid to Ukraine. Just
So
how I feel.
it's it's a it's a very deep topic, and before I get into my response, I just want to ask you guys to make sure you guys like and subscribe if you are enjoying this conversation, and make sure you comment below. Let us know what you think about what your response would be, how Canada fares with whether it's Biden that gets elected, whether it's Trump, and how our political system is faring, and what you guys hope to see in Canada as far as change is concerned. So when it comes to Ukraine, it's actually a pretty deep topic. I don't want to get too deep into it right now, because what I want to do is I want to do another episode where we deep dive into it. Um, because look, the Democratic government has been nothing if not in the shadows when it comes to Ukraine. They keep hiding behind the fact that we're just basically being a humanitarian partner, and we keep sending funds and we keep sending weapons because Ukraine can't defend itself and we have to help them, and so on and so forth, which is absolutely not true, right? US definitely has an agenda. It's a hidden agenda. Not a lot of people know exactly why US is pushing all these funds and basically laundering their money by sending all these funds and resources to the Ukraine. It's benefiting US. There's no question about it. I mean, just think about, how much they're making. Just exactly what ZP was saying earlier, right? Like when it comes to all these arms and ammunitions and the income that that brings, right?
Big
So there, yeah, big money, 100%.
I
Now,
just want to add one line there, just
sure,
for the audience. Russia is an aggressor,
yeah,
100%, no doubt about that, right? It invaded a country, makes Russia an aggressor. But that being said, all major powers in the world historically have been aggressors, including states, including any empires back in the day, right? They were aggressors. Now, if there are two powers in the world, either both of those can keep each other in check and make sure that no one is doing anything wrong. But we do see on one hand, you have a lot more aggression in terms of forming these alliances, huge military alliances. What are you forming them for? It's very clear it's for Russia, and then Russia is taking offense to that and then doing what it wants to do as the bully. So
yeah,
just wanted to voice that, right? That yes, if you invade in another country, you're in the wrong. But then as another or the biggest power of the world, the United States, you have a lot that you can do so that that doesn't happen. And then sometimes that means to have those friendly relationships with some countries. You don't have to be, buddies with them and hang out with Russians or Chinese all the time, but you can respect that. Yes, we understand you're also a big power, and we are also a big power, and let's not cause chaos in the world, right? Which
yeah,
bottom line there is, I think Ukraine is being used as a pawn. It's not about Ukraine. It's about defeating Russia and China. And
yeah, yeah.
it's it's
yeah,
it's hard to see that people are not realizing that's what's going on in the background, while poor Ukrainians are just dying left, right, and center.
yeah. Well, okay. So to answer the question that I had asked earlier, how that affects Canada, which candidate would be better, the thing you have to ask is, so I agree with the fact that, you know, our leadership has to step up and wake up, open their eyes if Trump is around, because he literally keeps everybody on their toes. Right now, our leadership is fallen to the fray, and they basically, Justin Trudeau has done everything possible to line his own pockets. One of the things that we're going to get into and transition into is the ArriveCAN app and all the money that, that is essentially just taken away from our government, right? With that said, when it's Biden that is leading the US looks weak. We are their northern border and northern neighbor. And when the US looks weak, and God forbid, if there was ever an aggressor such as China that is literally waiting on the sidelines, or Russia, that wanted to threaten the US or attack, God forbid, Canada wouldn't be too far behind, right? When it's Trump that is the leader, he instills fear in everybody else because, just like you said, ZP, he is unpredictable, right? But also, he stands on his own 2 feet, doesn't back down, and he is the one that I would want as my leader if I was living in the US today, to stand toe to toe against Vladimir Putin, against Xi in China, and negotiate with them to get us the best deal. I don't think that if Joe Biden, regardless of his State of the Union address and 68 minutes ranting like a crazy old man, regardless of his State of the Union, I don't think that if he was to stand or sit down face to face across Putin or against China, against Xi, that he would come out negotiating anything in the US's favor. I think Trump wins that by a landslide. So, with respect to the effects that it would have on Canada, especially in the world power dynamic, I think it benefits Canada to have Trump as the US president. Obviously, it definitely helps us in a way where, it wakes our leaders up to be on their toes. Yes, that does mean that Trump is going to negotiate on, for the best interest of the US, especially when it comes to Canada, right? And we have given them a lot of, you know, concessions on certain things. Even the last time that Trump was in, Canada had to make a lot of concessions, and Trump bragged about it. So, yeah, you get the good with the bad. But I would much rather have Trump than Biden, because the other fact to it is all these illegal migrants that are coming in, it's only a matter of time before they come from the southern border into the US, and then from the northern border into Canada. And we've already started seeing that. We've already started seeing illegal migrants coming into Canada. Look at where our crime rate is. Look at the amount of, killings, shootings, stabbings,
Shooting.
car thefts,
Yeah.
everything. It's a different country. Like, I literally, I go outside, I don't recognize it.
Have you
So
seen Trudeau's latest interview, or not an interview, whatever he was doing? Like he said somewhere that what we want to make sure Canadians recognize is that we are that welcoming nation. We have the ability to welcome and take pride in it. So he was talking something about our immigration. I'm not sure if you heard that. It's from a couple of
I
days ago.
didn't. No.
Yeah, it's interesting, and I kind of like the fact that it's coming out of Trudeau's mouth. I don't like it, but I get it. Like, yes, Canada is a huge country. Based on all projections, we do need a lot more workforce to
Mhm.
expand as an economy. But at the same
Yep.
time, we're not developing our infrastructure. So
Yeah.
immigrants may not be the problem, but the fact that they're all centered in one location where our Toronto police, that's suffering a lot of deficits. Our healthcare system is terrible compared to what it used to be 10 years ago.
Can't keep up, man. It
Um,
can't keep up.
we can't keep up, right? We have
Yeah.
our construction projects that take forever. The
Oh,
Eglinton,
man.
that's a running joke
Yeah.
for last 15, 20 years, right? So if we can work on our infrastructure and find a healthy balance, we're going to be in a better spot. But you're absolutely right. If we kind of lose control, we already have an immigration program where people from all over the world are able to apply, and we welcome them here. But then now you combine that with universities running scams to get international students to get money, and then they came out, right? They said that yeah, that was happening, and then they have
Mm,
threatened. The liberal government has actually threatened to shut down those universities or colleges that were getting a lot of those students here based on no like educational ground or whatever scheme they were running. Now you
yeah.
combine that with illegal migration, and just for context, those people who don't know, 500,000 in every year until 2025 or whatever the year is, and then on top until like these 2 years they have kind of restricted the numbers, but before these 2 years, 2023, 2024, the number of international students and refugee program, it it was 1 million people on top of the 500 every year. So 1.5 million people entering Canada for last couple of years,
Yeah.
and that does not include anyone coming in illegally, right? So if you add that as another layer on top of 1.5 million, we're not developing our infrastructure at the
Nowhere
same rate.
close, man. Nowhere close. And the problem is that most of these immigrants are coming to GTA. They're not, to my understanding, they're not being spread across evenly all across Canada, even though we have so much empty space in some other places in Canada.
Yeah.
But most 90%, I would say, if anything more than that, they all come into the GTA, which is really making GTA very, very crowded.
It's GTA or the greater Vancouver area, right?
Or that, yeah,
So it's either this or that. And the reality is, look, immigration is beneficial to most countries, especially developing countries such as Canada. Now,
yeah,
it it's kind of restricted to good immigration, right? And I think that our immigration program, our immigration system has a lot of holes in it, and that's the problem. It's not that, immigration is bad, we should stop immigration or anything of that nature. It's that, we're basically losing focus through the loopholes within our immigration system. And once people are here, they use and abuse all the other facilities that are provided by the government, which then in turn puts more burden on the government and the taxpayers, and nothing gets done. Right? Just look at the state of the cities that we're in. We are literally in shambles. We our roads are terrible. We can't get, the traffic. I mean, let's not even talk about the traffic, but the roads itself are terrible. You can't go on a smooth drive anywhere, right? There's potholes left, right, center. You're tearing up your tires. You get, you know what I mean? Like it's just a disaster. And
I mean,
then,
if you, sorry to cut you off, but look at it like the neighborhood that we grew up in, man. You go to
yeah,
that neighborhood today, you feel scared for your life. Like you're holding on to
absolutely,
yourself, your phone, your wallet, and you just want to quickly get into your car and drive away. Like
yeah.
it just
Well, I
becomes so
mean, and not just that, right? Think about, so we are fortunate enough to be able to drive and jump in our car and take off, right? Think about all the people that are taking public transit. Think about
yeah.
all the people that are standing at the subway stations where day after day there's
Oh yeah.
random stabbings at subway stations, at GO train stations. Like people are literally scared for their lives. So, the infrastructure, you're absolutely right. The traffic is absolutely horrendous. It doesn't matter what time of day you're traveling, it's bumper to bumper traffic, right? We just don't have the infrastructure for the amount of immigration that we have coming in, and we're not expanding anywhere nearly as quickly as we should be, right? People are coming in by the droves and taking over different neighborhoods and everything like that, putting a burden on the hospitals, on the schooling system, on the, community centers. Everything is filled to the brim and beyond. So I think, we really need to wake up, and our leadership really needs to wake up and start making Canada great again, because we are literally going down the drain at this point, and it's only a matter of time. I mean, and this kind of transitions into the next story that I wanted to talk to you guys about and kind of get your opinion. So I don't know how much you guys have heard about the ArriveCAN app. So anytime you're traveling in and out of Canada, you have to, the government wanted you to download the
I've used that
ArriveCAN app,
actually.
and yeah, we use that, right?
Yeah.
So the reason that this came into the public discussion, and also Pierre Poilievre brought this up at the hearing, was because the company that took the contract, this is the same company that Justin Trudeau has been contracting out since 2015. Since 2015, this company has had over $250 million worth of contracts. Guess how big the company is?
I want to know the name of this company. I'm sure the viewers do as well.
It's
Two
so
employees.
yeah, I read up on that as well.
Yeah.
It's crazy. It's
Yeah.
crazy. And not just that, the fact that it was a sole service provider. So I don't know if there was an open bidding and then these people got picked, which makes it even worse.
Yep.
That out of all and another fact about this company is it does not identify itself as a software company. So
Yep.
it was not a IT related. They never did any IT related projects. And the ArriveCAN costing taxpayers all this money, and thanks to conservatives that this even became that much of a common knowledge. But before
Yep.
that, it's what else was there? So I think liberals also passed some sort of a motion in the parliament to block getting the details out of this. So whatever how the process went to hire this company or give them the contract, there was a motion brought in to do more investigation, more of an open investigation, and get all those details out. And liberals tried to block that. I'm not sure if they were successful or not, but that was also very interesting. That why are you not being transparent? If let's say if you did make a mistake, which this is a horrible mistake, which costed that much money for a simple app with basic functionality, why are you not disclosing the process that was used to hire this firm so that we can avoid doing that in the future? So very interesting that they try to block that.
Yeah. I want to play a clip for you guys.
That one ArriveScan company received $250 million in contracts. Let's get this straight.
Yeah, we can hear it.
Employees headquartered in the basement of a tiny cottage. They got IT contracts, even though they admit they do no IT work. $250 million. WTF.
Here, here. I'm going to ask, we are dangerously close to crossing the line in terms of what is considered parliamentary language. That is an abbreviation which is commonly used with language, which is commonly understood not to be parliamentary. I'm going to ask the honourable opposition leader, please, to withdraw that comment and to use parliamentary language, please.
Where's the funds?
With that video, you can see the response from Pierre Poilievre about, inquiring a question that we all should be asking: where are the funds?
Yeah.
So this is a company, GC Strategies, that was given about $60 million for this project, which initially, by the way, they quoted that the project was going to take $80,000. And that 80,000 ballooned into $60 million. How that happens, why that happened, people should be asking the leadership in Canada.
Leadership should be telling the people before people even ask.
Well, the leadership ain't gonna tell nobody
We're
nothing.
not gonna tell, no way, but that's how it should be because it's our hard-earned money that they're using.
Yeah, no question.
Yeah.
Absolutely. All right, let's jump into another topic that we wanted to cover, which actually I didn't mention in the summary earlier, but we did want to touch a little bit on the Jeffrey Epstein list because ever since all the details came out about the Jeffrey Epstein, allegations and the list that was supposed to be revealed, Amir, I think you have some information that you wanted to share.
So yeah, I did some digging over here, and apparently that there's about a 950-page court document about
Wow.
Jeffrey Epstein's, and it talks about how he's a financer and he's a sex offender, and all these things were made public last Wednesday, um, and it has all these different names. And then talking of names, we were just mentioning some of those names earlier today in our conversation. Like
Yeah.
Donald Trump is in there, and along with him, there's Prince Andrews, Stephen Hawking, David Copperfield, and many other names. But the thing is that what I find weird is that we only hear a few names. We don't get the full list completely undisclosed to us, and it's just a repeat of just few names going again and again, just hearing the same things. And I think that why my question is that why are we not being shared the entire document or the entire 950-page documents that were there?
Yeah.
So this is something that I wanted to discuss and maybe get an opinion from your side as well.
Well, the interesting thing that I found was Prince Andrew that has been named in the list over and over again. So he had a lawsuit filed against him. And I don't know if you remember the conversation that we were having earlier about Judge Lewis Kaplan. Lewis Kaplan, he was the judge that essentially ordered Donald Trump to pay E. Jean Carroll $83.3 million. And this is the same judge that essentially threw out the case against Prince Andrew that had to do with the Jeffrey Epstein list. Lewis Kaplan was actually uh, hired under Bill Clinton.
So one thing I do want to mention, clarify about Trump, and how Amir mentioned his name is in the list. So his name is in the list, but he's not accused. And the reason his name is in the list is one of the people who came forward with an allegation from 2001 against Prince Andrew. He mentioned that at some point the aircraft needed to be refueled, and it landed on one of the strips of a casino that's owned by Trump. So that's how his name appears. And very interestingly, I think back in 2015 timeframe, Trump said that when there were first these, don't quote me on the date, it might be later on than that, that when this list was about to be made public,
Mhm.
and the whole Jeffrey Epstein case was, being revealed, Trump mentioned that there's going to be a lot of people who will have associations, and it'll not be good. It will not be good for them. Those
Yeah.
were Trump's words. And up until that point, this list wasn't released. There were just, rumors about it that this might be coming, and then Trump's name was in it. So, kind of what Trump was alluding towards is there is definitely something there, and there is a lot of powerful people that if that was made public, it'll impact all those powerful people. So, also there's conspiracies around the death of Jeffrey Epstein and how he committed suicide.
Yep.
Right. So there's a lot of these different conspiracy theories about the list, about how he died or committed suicide allegedly. So I don't think we'll ever get that clear picture in our lifetime. Right. Maybe from 100 or so years from now, maybe there's going to be some, further investigation and incrimination of people, but I don't think there's ever going to be that answer that we're going to find.
I think you're right. And I think what's going to happen is they're going to water it down as much as possible. I think we're going to keep hearing these, droplets of information every now and then that comes out. And it's just to eventually get people to be like, okay, you know what? I don't really even care about it. Like, it is what it is, happened a long time ago, and just forget about it. Right. And I think that's already happening. They've dragged this thing out so long as it is. And I think you're absolutely right. I think they're just going to keep on dragging this out as much as possible, so that the people that are actually involved, they walk away without any scratches or burns from it. And basically it's just a new day.
Yeah, I think that's where the trend is happening. And it's not the first time that this has happened in the history. It's happened many times in the past. This may just be one more of those things. And that, like you said, maybe 100 years from now, someone is going to come back at it and start investigating, and they're going to find things that were not revealed now. But at that point is how, like, yes, we learn from the history, but how's that going to open anything for us today, open any doors, or see or get us to think about what the reality is or how things are unfolding today.
Yeah,
Yeah, so
I completely agree.
And then just one more point, how we talked about the Trump's case. It's a known thing, right? Anytime that you want to bring someone down, it's a very quick allegation. This is one of those crimes you get the punishment before the allegations are proved, right? So they did with Russell Brand. It was the same kind of situation.
Yeah.
Even if there is truth to it, we always say for law it's innocent until proven guilty. But this is a very easy way to tarnish anyone's reputation, destroy their character, and then take all credibility from them. But now, when you flip the script a little bit, it's the same thing for powerful people, right? When those powerful people don't want these kind of news out, then obviously with something this huge, Jeffrey Epstein's case, something that massive, there's no media coverage ongoing talking about this. There's no holding our authorities accountable. We're focusing on Trump so much, and making sure that he doesn't have enough funds and energy to fight this election, and then removing him from the ballot. We don't really care about all these other things that are happening in the background.
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. And even with all that, even with all the different fines and charges that they want to, or indictments that they want to push on Trump, he's still coming out ahead. He's still pushing. And I think one of the other things that the liberal left machine, the deep state, is going to try is they're going to try and on election day create some sort of distraction that, or at least in hopes of giving them the edge, right? And I think we saw a little sneak peek of that on Super Tuesday, which was last Tuesday and Wednesday, when we saw Meta, Instagram, Facebook, WhatsApp, they were all down on Tuesday. Uh, Reports came out saying that this was a technical issue. On Wednesday, we also saw, I think LinkedIn and Twitter X went down on Wednesday. And interestingly enough, a week prior to this, AT&T went down, right? And even then, AT&T came out saying that this was a technical issue. And then with Meta going down and all these other services going down, they came out saying it's a technical issue. So what does this really mean? And were these cyber attacks? What do you think? Is this a playbook that they're going to use around the election time? What do you guys think?
So, I'll weigh in a bit over here.
Yeah.
So, I'll tell you, last week, we were having the same issue where we use this something called Workplace. It's basically Facebook, but that only corporations use internally for themselves.
Yeah.
And that went out as well. So, and which is owned by Facebook. So of course it makes sense. And everybody, like, on the business team and everybody was just like, oh man, this went out. What happened? What did we do? What is going on? Everybody was running around in a panic situation because the work stopped. And
Right.
people use these methods of social media to, get work done. And upon investigation, we found out that, hey, we got a notification from Workplace saying that, hey, it's something that's technically wrong on our side, and it's not just one company that's affected. It's a global effect, and everybody's affected. In
Mhm.
today's world, the way I understand IT, there's redundancies, and there's redundancies on top of redundancies, and
Yeah.
in order for something to go out 100%, the chances are almost less than 1%,
Yeah.
but somehow it managed to be 100% network outage.
And
So
especially with these sophisticated companies, right? Which
yes,
have so many backups in place. If there is some sort of technical outage or shortage or whatever you may have, right? So the crazy thing is CNN, which is again leaning left, comes out with a headline: top US cybersecurity agency hacked and forced to take some systems offline. So a federal agency in charge of cybersecurity was discovered that it was hacked last month and was forced to take two key computer systems offline, according to CNN. One of the U.S. Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency is affected. Systems runs a program that allows federal, state, and local officials to share cyber and physical security assessment tools, according to the U.S. officials. The other holds information on security assessment of chemical facilities. Boy, that sounds pretty
That's
dangerous.
yes,
And that
definitely.
definitely sounds like, some possible espionage attempts. So there's a lot of different things at play here. I mean, it could definitely be the liberal left agenda to basically, do a trial run as to on election day, if we were to black out Meta, Instagram, Facebook, WhatsApp, this, that, and the other. Um, People coordinating last minute, going to the polling booths and everything like that, it's definitely going to be a massive distraction. Yes. But also, now we also have to think about, is this espionage? Is this hackers from China, Russia, around the world that are attacking different infrastructures to basically find weaknesses, and essentially prepare for an all-out war somewhere down the road, right?
Yeah.
It's a scary thought. It's a scary situation to discuss. And I don't know. I mean, I would love to hear what you guys think down in the comments below. Definitely let us know what you think, if this was a planned, uh, you know, liberal sort of, you know, showcase, or if you think this was, just a hacking attempt, or if you think that it was simply just a technical outage.
So one thing I want to add is one of the movies that you recommended to me, Raheem, was Leave the World Behind, right? That's on Netflix. So it's looked very similar to that,
Yeah.
right? It's and another angle to this is I personally don't think it's a Democrat or liberal thing. What I personally think is the chances of it being a hacking attempt are higher, and the chances of it being an internal exercise. So we know that there's going to be a solar storm that's coming up. I think 2025, 2024. There's talks of a solar storm major enough that it's going to knock out a lot of our communication systems, right? So a lot of the times we do these doomsday exercises. What's going to happen if there's a nuclear attack? What's going to happen if there's all communication protocols break down? What's going to happen? Is it going to cause chaos in the public? So I think it could be one of those exercises where we just tested, hey, let's knock out all these major communication platforms and
Yeah.
see what happens in preparation for potential solar storm. So we may find out later on what this was, if this was more than a technical fault. But what Amir said, right? Redundancies built on top of redundancies. That is true. To have a system knocked out completely all over the world or major part of the world, it has to be something more than just a technical fault. So there may be a little bit more of an angle to it. But personally, I think the hacking, there's fairly high chance that might be the case. And if you think about it, we have enemies all over the world, right?
Yeah.
Middle East, North Korea, Russia, China, and some of those attacks are happening on the daily basis,
Yeah.
which we prevent. And then one of those slips through the crack. So it might be that, or it might be an exercise because of that solar storm
Yeah.
that's coming up, or also as a defense exercise if there is an EMP weapon that's detonated, which again is in development right now. Maybe some countries already have acquired those. So what happens when that kind of weapon is detonated? What would it do to our servers? An interesting point, not to drag too much off topic, but there was as per one construction agent or company, whatever you want to call it, as per one of those companies, the luxury bunkers, the inquiries for luxury bunkers has gone up 2,000% year over year. And some of those bunkers, the Switzerland-based bunkers that are being built in states, I found one in Canada, or sorry, not found. I heard about one in Canada that costed about $20 million or so dollars. So
Wow.
there's these luxury bunkers which have supplies, just basically the same thing that we saw in that movie, Leave the World Behind. And that's actually happening. They're these bunkers that are built to resist nuclear detonations, EMP devices, solar storms, and have food for multiple number of years. So that's very interesting. That kind of goes around the same topic that we're on. Maybe that's something we can dive a little bit later or deeper later on.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great deep dive. And yeah, Mark Zuckerberg, I mean, we know that he has multiple bunkers around the US. The one we know about for a fact is the one that they showcased online, which was in Hawaii. But you know, you got to assume that this guy has multiple bunkers around the world, right? So, but yeah, we can definitely deep dive into it in a later episode. What I want to end off this podcast with, because we are sort of at our time limit here, is we basically changed our clocks today, and we are now in daylight savings time. I personally, I hate it. I think that we should stop this nonsense. I think 75,000 people had signed the petition this time around just in Toronto, or sorry, in Canada, saying that they don't want to continue with daylight savings time. What do you guys think quickly? If you like it, dislike it, and then I definitely want our viewers to comment below as to whether you support this, whether you want this to stop, because I'm hoping that we can get enough traction to get this to finally stop.
Okay. So I got a question.
Yeah.
Do we know why we do change our clocks every 6 months?
Yeah, well, it's in the name, daylight savings.
Okay. What I'm asking, maybe I should be a little bit more specific over here, is what is the technical reason or the scientific reason why most of the people are not in favor of constantly changing their clocks every 6 months, and they just rather have just one straight time? Because there is also a group of people that believe that time is just relative. It's just time. They think of it differently. They don't think of it as that, okay, 10 o'clock of the day, it's time to do this. 12 o'clock of the day, this time to do that. They just think as, okay, time just goes by, it just passes, and that's how it is.
The major reason, I think. Sorry, go ahead, Amir. Didn't want to cut you off. Go finish your thought.
Yeah, I'm just saying that, hey, if I was to ask do I want to change the time every 6 months, I would say I'm one of those people who would want to stay exactly on par with what I just mentioned, that I don't want to lose track of time on a solar system level. So yes, it's a bit of a nuisance, it's a bit of a change, and you got to adapt to it, but you got to give something to get something.
So I think one of the big reasons that as Canada we don't change, and it's basically the markets, right? The markets, New York is one of the major factors here. If they don't move away with this daylight saving time clock, I'm of the opinion that let's move the clock ahead, take advantage of that extra daylight during the summer months, and then just leave it there.
Leave it there.
Don't change it back. Don't come to the winter times, and just leave it there. But again, we will never, shouldn't say never, but it's very unlikely in the absence of US, specifically New York, changing that practice before we can see that implemented in Canada. As long as New York's going to keep doing it, our markets are tied to them. Our infrastructure is tied to them electrically. Like we have the same Eastern grid in GTA. So unless they do the change first, we won't be able to do the change. And as far as I know, there is willingness to get away from daylight time saving, at least in Canada.
Oh yeah, and that's what I wanted to end off with. I wanted to give some stats and some facts. So about 57% Canadians and 63% Americans prefer to eliminate DST. 75,000 Canadians, like I said before, signed a petition to the federal government asking them to end DST. And according to Johns Hopkins, researchers say that the change has long-term negative consequences for our bodies and minds. This can throw off our circadian rhythms, Studies show depression, anxiety, suicidal thoughts increase around the daylight savings time. And also, it's associated with increased cardiovascular morbidity, such as including risk of myocardial infarction, strokes, and hospital admissions due to the occurrence of acute atrial fibrillation. Also, interesting fact, traffic accidents increase in the first few days from the change from standard time to DST. So with that said, I think we can all agree that we got to get rid of DST.
That sounds like when I have flu and I search my symptoms on WebMD and it gives me like the absolute worst. Like I'm sure 1 hour probably doesn't cause that much havoc, but I'm probably gonna have to go with the experts here. But as I mentioned, this is something that may not change if we see the first step from the states happen first. As far as I know, even our politicians are of the mindset that this is something we can change and just stick with the regular time zones and not have to change that every 6 months or so.
That's right. Well, thank you once again, guys. This was a fantastic conversation, fantastic podcast. Thank you to all our listeners for tuning in and checking us out. Once again, make sure you like and subscribe, and please share the channel so that we grow. We're growing organically. We don't have any sponsors. We're self-sponsored, so please make sure you like, subscribe, and share the channel. Signing off is your boy Raheem from the 905 and the 416, Amir and CP. See you later.